it's entirely possible that he was unwillingly kept in this home without really any escape.
It's entirely possible that he was unwillingly kept in this home without really any escape himself. That sentence came from a defense attorney, not a prosecutor. It was said about a 73-year-old grandfather who now faces criminal charges. But listen to the wording again. Not that he was a suspect, not that he was a perpetrator, that he may have been kept unwillingly, without escape.
New charges for the 4 Siders family members found in a home with 16 children. We're looking at the charges related to those children who've been part of a secret investigation before and what could happen to their grandparents. As the father of the 16 children appears in court for the first time in weeks. I'm Anjanette Levy, and this is Crime Fix.
Here is the visual anchor. Picture a wheelchair sitting in the corner of a living room that has not been cleaned in months. The wheels are dusty. The seat is worn. But no one is in it. That wheelchair belongs to Gary Sider Sr. And the question at the center of this case is whether that chair was a place of rest or a place of containment. Before we go deeper into what the documents actually show, make sure you're subscribed to True Crime Court. Because we don't just cover the story, we follow the evidence.
The legal trouble for 4 members of the Siders family is far from over. For 2 of the 4, the legal jeopardy has gotten much worse. For the other 2, it's improved just slightly. These developments came after the Venton County Grand Jury met and returned indictments against Gary Siders Jr. and Elizabeth Siders for sexual battery and unlawful sexual conduct with a minor.
The Venton County Grand Jury returned indictments against 4 members of the Siders family. Gary Sider Jr. and Elizabeth Sider now face charges of sexual battery and unlawful sexual conduct with a minor. Gary Sr. and Christina Sider, the grandparents, face child endangering charges. 4 people, 1 house, 16 children removed.
The charges are not related to allegations involving their own children. Gary and Elizabeth were also indicted on 19 counts of child endangering, ranging from 2nd-degree felonies to 3rd-degree felonies and some misdemeanor counts. Their legal situation is incredibly serious, even if the child endangering charges are reduced just slightly. And today, Gary Siders Jr. appeared in court in Venton County for a last-minute hearing. He pleaded not guilty to all charges, including the new sex crimes charges he faces. Gary Jr.'s attorney is challenging his mental competency.
But here is the first irony explosion. Gary Jr. appeared in court and pleaded not guilty to all charges, including the new sex crimes counts. His attorney is now challenging his mental competency. And in the same hearing, the judge raised his bail from $300,000 to $550,000. The accused father is fighting the charges. But his own father may not even understand the charges against him.
Judge Rogers raised his bail from $300,000 to $550,000. Gary Jr.'s parents, Gary Sr. and Christina Sider, still face child endangering charges, but the level of charges they face has been reduced. Both elder Siders had faced 16 counts of child endangering, felonies of the 2nd degree, when they were arrested, but now Gary Sr. faces 16 counts, 10 felonies of the 3rd degree, and 6 counts are now misdemeanors. His wife, Christina Siders, faces 19 counts of child endangering, 2 F2s, 10 F3s, and 7 misdemeanors. According to
the elder Siders saw their charges reduced. Gary Sr. originally faced 16 counts of child endangering as 2nd-degree felonies. Now he faces 10 3rd-degree felonies and 6 misdemeanors. Christina faces 19 counts, but 2 are 2nd-degree felonies, 10 are 3rd-degree, and 7 are misdemeanors. The alleged abuse and neglect ran from June 2022 through June 2026. That is 4 years. 4 years of documented decline.
To the indictment, the alleged abuse and neglect took place from June 2022 through June of 2026. This is still a very serious situation, no doubt, but the elder Siders, they lived with their son and daughter-in-law and the children prior to their move to Venton County, and Children's Services was involved with them then, although Gary Sr. didn't appear to be a part of that investigation. The children pulled from the house on Omer Street, They're now in therapeutic foster care, thank goodness, and Venton County is seeking permanent custody of the 16 children. That means the kids were in bad shape and they need a lot of help, and it also means
The children pulled from the house on OMR Street are now in therapeutic foster care. Venton County is seeking permanent custody of all 16. That means the county believes the children were in bad shape and need significant help. It also means Gary Jr. and Elizabeth would never get them back if the county succeeds. The paperwork already knew. That phrase, the paperwork already knew.
if the county is successful in its bid for permanent custody, Gary Jr. and Elizabeth, they're never getting the kids back. Back in 2020 and 2021, the state of Ohio, they planned to take custody of the 9 Siders children. There were only 9 then, but removing them wasn't an option at that time, according to court records. So the court granted Children's Services request for protective supervision, which allowed a caseworker to help Gary Jr. and Elizabeth complete a case plan and keep their children. Gary Jr. and Elizabeth received a notice that stated,
Go back to 2020 and 2021. The state of Ohio planned to take custody of 9 Sider children, 9 at the time, but removing them was not an option, according to court records. So the court granted protective supervision. A caseworker was assigned to help Gary Jr. and Elizabeth complete a case plan and keep their children. The state was in the house. The state was watching.
an adjudication of abuse, neglect, or dependency may result in an order of temporary custody. An order of temporary custody will cause the removal of a child from the legal custody of the parent until the court terminates the order of temporary custody or permanently divests them of their parental rights. When a complaint contains a prayer or request for permanent custody of a neglected or dependent child, the parents of said child are hereby notified that the granting of such permanent custody takes from the natural or adoptive parents all rights, duties, and obligations of a parent, including the right to consent to an adoption of the child, to inherit from the child, and the right of the child to inherit from the parent.
Then the parents received a formal notice, quotee, an adjudication of abuse, neglect, or dependency may result in an order of temporary custody. An order of temporary custody will cause the removal of a child from the legal custody of the parent until the court terminates the order of temporary custody or permanently divests them of their parental rights. That is not a warning. That is a map of what would happen next.
Children's Services wasn't requesting permanent custody of the children back in 2020 and 2021, but they were on notice that it could be a possibility. Children's Services opened a case in 2020 after receiving a complaint from an online school that some of the children were supposed to be attending. Records showed the kids were barely logging on to online school and were essentially illiterate. The oldest at the time was 12. That case was closed and
Children's Services opened a case in 2020 after an online school reported that some of the children were barely logging on and were essentially illiterate. The oldest at the time was 12 years old, a 12-year-old who could not read. That case was closed. Another opened later that year after doctors found high levels of lead in 4 of the children's systems.
another was opened later that year after doctors found high levels of lead in 4 of the children's systems. They were living in this house on Honeysuckle in Cheshire at the time. There was a concern that one of the kids was being abused because the child had bruising on the back of her thigh. That case was closed after Gary Jr. and Elizabeth completed a case plan and they kept the kids. For some of that time that this was going on, the grandparents of the children, Gary Sider Sr. and Christina Siders, were living with the family and the kids.
There was also a concern that one child was being abused because she had bruising on the back of her thigh. That case was closed after Gary Jr. and Elizabeth completed a case plan, and they kept the kids. During some of that time, Gary Sr. and Christina were living with the family. Only Christina's name came up in the investigation. Gary Sr. did not appear to be part of it.
Only Christina Sider's name came up in the investigation. Gary Sr. and Christina, they looked pretty good in this photo posted on Facebook back in 2023, and even in this photo, believed to be from 2024, posted by one of their daughters on Facebook. Gary Sr. and Christina looked clean and healthy. It was taken outside of the house on Omer Street. So what happened in just a few years, or even a couple of years? Family members have claimed on social media that Gary Sr. and Christina didn't live like this, but apparently...
Now the parallel narrative. In photos posted on Facebook in 2023 and 2024, Gary Sr. and Christina looked clean and healthy. They stood outside the house on Omar Street. They looked like grandparents. Family members claimed on social media that they did not live like this. But apparently they were living like this. One family member told a West Virginia TV station that they were kept at arm's length from the family.
They were living like this. And one family member told a West Virginia TV station that they were kept at arm's length from the family. The prosecutor says the family was hiding Gary Jr. and Elizabeth's 16 children. But let's focus now on Gary Sider Sr. specifically, Grandpa. You can tell when you look at the jail booking video that Gary Sr. is not well. He's in a wheelchair. And when he appeared in court, he didn't appear.
The prosecutor says the family was hiding Gary Jr. and Elizabeth's 16 children, but focus on Gary Sr. specifically. In the jail booking video, he is in a wheelchair. When he appeared in court, he did not appear to totally understand what was happening. His mental competency has been questioned. This is not a man who looks like a co-conspirator. This is a man who looks like a patient.
I want to turn now to two people who are representing one of the Sider's family members, Gary Sider Sr. Dorian Baum has been here before, so welcome back, Dorian, and you are joined today by your co-counsel, John Getson. So, John, thanks for coming on with Dorian. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
No problem, Anjanette. Thank you.
Dorian, let's start with you. I want your reaction to the indictment, the charges that your client specifically faces. He was facing 16 counts of child endangering. They were felonies of the second degree. Those have now, been reduced. There's a sprinkling of misdemeanors and felony charges in there. Your reaction?
His attorney, Dorian Baum, said exactly that. He said the charges against Gary Sr. have been reduced in number and in severity, that Gary Sr. has the least serious charges of all four defendants, and that the number of counts simply reflects the number of people in the home, not active participation, not intent, presence. That is what the state is alleging, presence.
Action is this is exactly what I told you would be happening. As I said it from the outset, we still haven't received discovery yet. I have been contacted by the prosecutor's office. We have to just do some administrative stuff on the back end in order to make sure the discovery gets delivered properly. But, once again, from the complaint to the amended complaint, now to the indictment, the charges have been reduced in number and in severity for Mr. Sider Sr. This is a gentleman who of all the four, he has the least serious charges of all of them. And also, when we're talking about the number of counts, I want to make sure that the public is not misinterpreting this as some sort of anything indicative of anything other than the number of people who are in the home. That's why the counts are the number that they are. This is still essentially alleging he was complicit in this one actor incident. But even with that, as we've talked about previously, he is still undergoing his competency evaluation, as well as if he's going to be found NGRI, not guilty by reason of insanity. I still have significant concerns about his mental health, about his mental faculties.
Baum said he still has not received discovery, and that Gary Sr. is still undergoing a competency evaluation. The attorney raised the possibility of a not guilty by reason of insanity finding. He said he has significant concerns about Gary Sr.'s mental health and mental faculties. Then he said this: "I don't know how much Mr. Siders was involved in this, if he was involved at all. And frankly, I think we're talking more about someone who himself may have been victimized more than anything else." The paperwork already knew.
Overall, I am basically in the same position today that I was yesterday, that I was the day before. I don't know how much Mr. Siders was involved in this, if he was involved at all. And frankly, I think we're talking more about someone who himself may have been victimized more than anything else.
How do you think your client was victimized?
Well, if you have an individual who is at advanced age and who's in a home, and from all reports that I've heard or seen so far, some of his, whether it was Social Security or other state benefits, are being used essentially to finance the renting of this home, utilities, food, what have you. And if this is an individual who himself is not all there or has significant mental decline or issues, it's entirely possible that he was.
The attorney was asked how his client was victimized. His answer was precise. Gary Sr. is of advanced age. He lives in a home where, from all reports, his Social Security or other state benefits were being used to finance the rent, utilities, and food. If that man is in significant mental decline, Baum said, then it is entirely possible he was unwillingly kept in that home without any real escape. His own money, his own decline, his own containment.
John, have you gotten to meet with Mr. Siders, with Gary Siders Sr.?
I have not at this point, no.
You have not. What is your reaction to the charges? Obviously, you're the co-counsel on this case, but there were F2s, and now, as I mentioned, the charges have been reduced for him on indictment.
Right, I'd say it's similar to Dorian's reaction. Obviously, we've talked about the case as it's progressed, but the fact that they're already dropping it from the F2s as was initially put in the criminal complaint to an indictment of an F3 is showing what Dorian has been stating from the beginning.
Dorian, I want to hit on the competency evaluation part of this. You said it's still in progress. Has that been conducted?
So it's my understanding that Mr. Siders was transported to the facility, building, etc., where the doctor would be evaluating him. I don't have any results of that. I don't have any reports. I don't have any indications how far along we are with that. Just so people are fully aware, it's not like you're going in for a flu shot and they're like, while we're in here, let's do a strep test, and then 15 minutes later you have the results. This is the kind of thing where you get evaluated, it gets put in sort of the meat grinder of the evaluation process, eventually a report gets spit out, and that's when we see it. Usually we're talking 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks after the actual evaluation takes place. So the fact that we don't have an evaluation or report yet is not too much of a surprise for me. I will say, though, that I do know Mr. Siders has continued to receive other medical treatment to deal with some of his physical ailments as well.
Here is the ticking clock moment. The competency evaluation is not like a flu shot. You do not get results in 15 minutes. Baum said the evaluation gets put into what he called the meat grinder of the process. A report could take 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks after the evaluation. And while that clock runs, Gary Sr. is still receiving medical treatment for serious physical ailments. So the question becomes, can a man who may not be competent to stand trial be held criminally responsible for what happened inside a house he may not have been able to leave?
With that, but there is this side issue. I mean, his son, Gary Siders Jr., and his daughter-in-law, Elizabeth, they were sharing the same address for a long time, for a long time, not consistently the entire time that these sexual abuse allegations are dated in the indictment, but they were sharing living space. So it begs the question, do you believe your client may have had any knowledge of what was going on, at least the alleged, at this point, sexual abuse?
So I want to preface all of this with the first thing being that there is a gag order still in place as far as I'm aware. So I can't get too far into the weeds on that as it pertains to anybody else's charges or allegations. As you noted, they are still alleged. And of interesting note, Mr. Getson pointed this out to me the other day. At the very, very bottom of the Attorney General's most recent press release, he was very clear to note that all charges are pending and all people are presumed innocent until proven guilty. So I want to make sure that's out there. But when it comes to Mr. Siders Sr., number one, he's currently being evaluated for competency. So if he's not competent, I think that really would bear some enlightenment on the question of whether he was knowing what was going on, whether he's knowledgeable of what was going on, because clearly if you're not competent or if you're NGRI, that in and of itself says essentially you're not aware of what's going on. Number two, I don't know, having not seen any of the discovery, I don't know where these alleged incidents were to have taken place. Just because they all live together, most people don't commit criminal acts if in fact they are committed under the watchful eye of other people who are not committing those same acts. So, if I'm going to go rob a bank, I don't typically walk right in the front door and be like, hey, I'm here to rob this bank, and then go take some money. There's usually some surreptitious conduct, there's some, hiding, whatever you're doing, etc. So when it comes to whatever Mr. Siders may or may not have known about, I think it's instructive that the state doesn't seem to believe so, because if so, they would have charged him under some sort of complicity action or complicity part of the statute. He simply wasn't charged. So at the very outset, it appears the state does not believe he had any knowledge, any involvement, or anything else. It appears from the charges that he was effectively charged for whatever they came to find in the house at those lesser charges of misdemeanors and lower level felonies.
The attorney was pressed on whether Gary Sr. knew about the alleged sexual abuse. His answer was layered. There is a gag order in place. All charges are pending. All people are presumed innocent. But then he made the key point. Gary Sr. was not charged under any complicity statute. The state does not appear to believe he had knowledge or involvement in those specific acts. He was charged for whatever they came to find in the house, not for what he did, for what was around him.
What can you guys tell us about your client? I mean, we don't know anything about him except he's a 73-year-old man. He has at least 16 grandchildren. We know he actually has more than that. But, what do we know about him? Can you tell us anything about his background?
Well, frankly, part of it, and I know Mr. Getson has kind of found some stuff online as well that usually funnels my way. A lot of this is just what we're hearing from either other family members or the community. What I know about him is exactly what I've already shared. He's an older gentleman. He's in serious physical and mental decline, apparently. He certainly has significant health issues. He was a part of this family. He does have other family members, in the community who have seemed to express publicly via either social media or otherwise that he didn't always seem to be in this sort of bit of decline and he looks worse than he did previously. But a lot of what we know is what we know just as everyone else does from online social media. My specific contacts with him have been deliberately limited for a multitude of reasons, but the primary one being, as I think I've discussed with you before, I don't like to get involved or meddle with competency evaluations. And once I determine that a person is very likely, in my view, either not competent or his competence is in question, I don't really delve much further than that because I want to let the professionals do it without any sort of outsider interference, because I don't want anyone, any third party, any state entity to try to say that I influence in some way the competency evaluation to try to get what they may believe I think is a favorable outcome. I just want to let the process.
Gary Sr. is 73 years old. He has at least 16 grandchildren. He is in serious physical and mental decline. Family members have said publicly that he did not always look like this, that he looked worse than he did before. But the attorney has deliberately limited his contact with Gary Sr. He does not want anyone to claim he influenced the competency evaluation. He wants the process to play out in what he called a vacuum.
You said you're getting your information, a lot of it, from the community, social media. There's a photo out there that we've used several times where Gary Sider Sr. and his wife, Christina, they look pretty good. It's from 2023, I believe. They look clean. They don't look dirty. There's even one with one of their daughters outside that home on Omer Street where they don't look bad at all. And I think that that's a more recent photo. And there have been people commenting that they didn't live like that. They didn't live in squalor, that they lived, they kept their house clean. So I guess, have you been able to glean any information about why their house fell into the condition that it did?
Well, I haven't personally, because again, as I said, I haven't talked to him for all those reasons previously discussed, but that itself sort of begs the question, doesn't it? If the house was found in this condition and these two individuals weren't individuals who generally kept their house like that and they didn't live in squalor and they were in clean conditions, your original question to me was, how could he potentially be a victim? Well, if you went from a person who had your faculties about you and as they started to slip, the people around you in your life allowed the house that you had kept clean and tidy and kept yourself clean and tidy, and they allowed everything to slip into that condition.
Now the hard evidence of decline. Photos from 2023 show Gary Sr. and Christina looking clean and healthy. A more recent photo outside the home on Omer Street shows the same. So what happened in just a couple of years? Baum said if a person with his faculties about him kept a clean house, and then the people around him allowed everything to slip into squalor, that is not a perpetrator. That is a victim.
That's, to me, seems like someone who was perhaps themselves victimized. But again, a lot of this is conjecture, and I hate to get into that conjecture game without seeing the discovery, seeing the evidence. But it does certainly tend to raise more questions than it answers. Except for, I think we've all seen people in our lives who, forgetting this particular condition, but it just in general, things can go quickly. A person can get depressed, and all of a sudden they go from holding up a good job, and 3 months later they lost their job. They're living in shambles. They're in debt. Yada yada yada. Things happen with people. I don't know what's happened with this family as of right now. All I know is what they've been alleged to have done via the indictment and via whatever communications I've had with the state prior to now. But that hopefully will all those questions will hopefully be answered as we get through the discovery.
John, any final thoughts on this?
Not any further. I think we covered all of it. Just he is presumed innocent until proven guilty, and at this point we're just pushing forward with the case.
Well, Dorian Baum and John Getson, thank you so much for joining me. We'll continue to follow the case, and we hope you'll come back sometime soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anjanette. Absolutely. We're happy to meet with you again in the future.
The unanswered question is this: why does a 73-year-old man in a wheelchair with a GPS monitor on his ankle still face criminal charges while the state acknowledges he is not a threat to the public? He is free on a signature bond. He is still receiving treatment for an undisclosed medical condition. That condition, if he had stayed in jail, could have bankrupted the county. So it must be something serious, and yet the charges remain. The paperwork already knew. Now go look at the Venton County Grand Jury indictment yourself. Read the child endangering counts against Gary Sr. Then ask yourself one question in the comments: does the state's own charging document show a perpetrator or a man who was trapped? If this case makes you question what you thought you knew, like this video, share it, subscribe to True Crime Court, and turn on notifications. We will follow the discovery. We will follow the evidence. We will be here when the next document drops.